The story of Marqués de Riscal goes beyond winemaking. For more than a century and a half, the winery has demonstrated a firm determination to innovate and take risks, always looking to the future with ambition. A journey marked by bold decisions, which led it to be recognized as the best vineyard in the world in 2024. The story begins in 1858, when Guillermo Hurtado de Amezaga, the fifth Marqués de Riscal, founded the winery. From the very beginning, the winery embraced innovation, its vision, to apply in La Rioja the techniques used in France. Guillermo and his son Camilo, who were living in Bordeaux at the time, absorbed all the knowledge available in one of the world's wine capitals. The Provincial Council of Alava, aware of their presence in Bordeaux, commissioned Guillermo to find a master winemaker to introduce Bordeaux techniques in the region. The chosen one was Jean Pinot, thus giving birth to the Médoc-Alavet. We enter the decade of the 1860s. In 1862, the winery moves ahead of its surroundings by becoming the first Rioja estate to embrace bottling as a method of wine preservation. This was a groundbreaking milestone that ushered the winery fully into the modern era of viticulture. Today, more than 160 years later, the first bottles of Marqués de Riscal are a unique treasure that reinforces the ideas of legacy, exclusivity, and craftsmanship. Of the vines brought from France, Cabernet Sauvignon adapted the best, making it fair to credit Marqués de Riscal as the introducer of this grape variety in Rioja. In 1863, just a year later, Marqués de Riscal completed the construction of its first winery. The project, initially designed by engineer Ricardo Belsola in 1858, was completed with the help of Galician stonemasons, who had already worked on some of the most important buildings in the old quarter of El Ciego. Inside the winery is the cellar of old wines, where more than 130,000 bottles rest, including the very first vintage bottled by Marqués de Riscal, a true wine sanctuary and one of the greatest enological treasures in the world. In 1868, the Médoc-Alavet project came to an end due to a lack of resources. However, Marqués de Riscal persisted with Pinot, hiring him at their own expense and risk. In 1876, the winery financed the reconstruction of the Ebro Bridge, which connects El Ciego with Cenicero, after it had been destroyed during the Third Carlist War, thus facilitating the transport of goods. That same year, Marqués de Riscal became the first Spanish wine to be sold through the exclusive Place de Bordeaux system. The commitment to Bordeaux methods bore fruit. Marqués de Riscal began to receive numerous accolades, the most notable being the medal awarded at the Madrid Wine Exhibition of 1877. An acknowledgement that valued not only the quality of the wine, but also the generosity of the winery in sharing its knowledge with other wine growers, even with those who could be considered direct competitors. Guillermo and Camilo Hurtado de Amezaga were visionary men. They understood that the development of the region benefited everyone. Later, the winery decided to purchase grapes above market price as a measure to protect the rural environment and curb depopulation. In 1883, Marqués de Riscal took another step forward by expanding its facilities with El Palomar, a building inspired by Bordeaux wineries, which would become one of the winery's most recognizable symbols thanks to its distinctive red doors and windows. The final decade of the 19th century was turbulent but rewarding for the winery. In 1888, Camilo Hurtado de Amezaga died, and his wife, Juana Zavala, took over the winery. She thus became the first woman to lead Marqués de Riscal. She faced many difficulties, such as the devastating phylloxera plague that ravaged the region, wiping out much of the winery's vineyards. But Juana's efforts to preserve the winery bore fruit. In 1895, Marqués de Riscal became the first non-French winery to obtain the Certificate of Honor at the Bordeaux exhibition. With the turn of the century, the winery witnessed technical advances, such as the arrival of electricity, which benefited its operations. The Ebro River became one of the first channels used for electricity production, boosting the development of the region. It was in these first decades of the 20th century that some of the winery's most iconic reserves were produced. Strong and vigorous wines, full of richness, that were sold all over the world. From the very beginning, Marqués de Riscal exported its wines, and over the years it consolidated its export vocation. In fact, by 1928, Marqués de Riscal was present in 32 countries. These included England, France, Finland, Peru, Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil, Mexico, the United States, Japan, the Philippines, Morocco. In the early 1970s, Marqués de Riscal ventured into the production of white wines. After studying different regions and with the advice of renowned wine expert Émile Pinault, they chose Rueda. In 1972, they launched their first white wine made from the indigenous Verdejo grape, revitalizing the variety and creating a new style of fresh, fruity wines. 2 years later, they introduced the Sauvignon Blanc variety to the area with the help of Doctor of Œnology Denis Boubals, who brought the first cuttings from France. The process reached its peak in 1980 with the creation of the Rueda denomination of origin, a milestone in which the winery played a pioneering role. In 1986, Baron de Chirel was born, inspired by the Médoc Alavés, symbolizing the rebirth of the great Rioja wines after some difficult decades. With the new millennium came one of the winery's most significant milestones: the creation of the Marqués de Riscal Hotel, a building that would mark a before and after in the history of the winery and the region. In an increasingly competitive wine market, Marqués de Riscal commissioned prestigious architect Frank O'Gary, creator of the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao, to design a unique hotel in the heart of El Ciego. Many thought the proposal reckless. A luxury hotel in a village of 1,000 inhabitants, a cutting-edge design building alongside century-old vineyards. But once again, audacity was rewarded. The Marqués de Riscal Hotel became a global icon of wine tourism, blending luxury, art and wine. In 2016, the winery decided to embrace organic farming, extending the life of its vineyards. In 2020, Tapias was launched, a wine that brought the winery back to its roots, evoking the wines it produced in its early days. It was marketed through the Place de Bordeaux system, just as the winery had done at the beginning. We cannot conclude this historical journey without mentioning the award received in 2024, the Best Vineyard in the World, which recognized the winery as the best vineyard worldwide, placing it at the pinnacle of the wine world. Today, Marqués de Riscal is more than just a winery. It is a universal symbol of how, by combining tradition, innovation, and risk-taking, the impossible can be made possible.